Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the sun-soaked streets of Alexandria, Egypt, circa 40 BCE, where the air hums with spice, sweat, and the faint jingle of gold. Picture yourself stepping off a creaky merchant ship, sandals crunching on the dock, as the Nile's muddy green waters lap nearby. The city's a sensory explosion. Vendors hawk pomegranates, incense curls skyward, and donkeys bray louder than your neighbor's DIY project. You're here to spend a day in Cleopatra's world, where every gesture drips with strategy and one wrong move might land you in a crocodile's lunch menu. Yeah, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through Alexandria's bustling port, where the Mediterranean's salty tang mixes with the stench of fish and tar. The harbor's a chaotic masterpiece. Towering Pharos Lighthouse, one of the seven wonders, looms in the distance, its beacon slicing through the morning haze. Ships from Rome, Greece, and beyond bob like corks, unloading amphorae of wine and grain. You dodge a cart piled with dates, nearly tripping over a stray cat. Sacred here, so don't step on its tail unless you want a mob after you. The city's a melting pot, with Greek philosophers arguing in togas, Egyptian priests in linen kilts, and traders from Nubia flashing gold earrings. Cleopatra's Alexandria isn't just a city. It's the beating heart of the Hellenistic world, a hub of trade and ideas where power shifts like desert sand. Your path winds toward the Malsaion, the great library's nerdy cousin, where scholars scribble on papyrus and debate geometry like it's the latest TikTok trend. Historians say it housed thousands of scrolls, maybe even Euclid's original math homework. But you're not here for books. You're headed to the royal quarter, where Cleopatra's palace sprawls like a marble dream. The streets narrow and mud brick houses give way to polished stone. You pass a vendor slathering on crocodile dung sunscreen. Yep, that's a real Egyptian skincare hack. And no, it doesn't smell like Chanel. A quirky tidbit. Some sources claim Cleopatra herself used this bizarre lotion to keep her skin flawless, though good luck verifying that without a time machine. You weave through a market where stalls overflow with myrrh, figs, and knockoff Roman jewelry. A merchant tries to sell you a genuine amulet of Isis, but it's probably as authentic as a dollar store Rolex. The crowd's a kaleidoscope, Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, Persian, and their languages blend into a dizzying hum. You spot a Roman soldier, red cape dusty, eye a local girl who's clearly unimpressed. Tensions simmer here. Rome's shadow looms large, and Cleopatra's got to juggle alliances like a circus act. Historians still argue whether she was more Greek or Egyptian in her rule. Her Ptolemaic blood was Macedonian, but she spoke Egyptian, unlike her ancestors, which made her a local favorite. The palace district's gates come into view, gilded and flanked by sphinxes with unblinking eyes. Guards in bronze breastplates size you up, their spears glinting in the sun. You're just a visitor, but you feel the weight of their stare, like you forgot your ID at a VIP club. Beyond the gates, palm trees sway and fountains murmur, hinting at the luxury within. You're about to step into Cleopatra's world, where every smile hides a scheme, and the air smells faintly of lotus and ambition. The morning's young, but the city's already alive with whispers of her latest power play. You take a deep breath, hoping you don't trip over a peacock or offend noble. This is Cleopatra's turf, and you're just along for the ride. You pass a street performer juggling flaming torches, a crowd clapping like he's the ancient equivalent of a viral YouTuber. A kid tugs your sleeve, offering a lotus flower for a coin. Cute, but you're not falling for that tourist trap. The palace's outer walls shimmer with inlaid lapis, and you can't help but gawk. It's not just wealth, it's a statement. Cleopatra's ancestors built this to scream, with the bosses, and she's keeping up the tradition. You notice a group of priests chanting near a shrine, their shaved heads gleaming. Religion's big here. Cleopatra is not just queen, but a living goddess, which, let's be real, is a flex most CEOs can only dream of. Your stomach growls as you pass a bakery, the scent of barley bread pulling you in. You grab a loaf, tearing off a chunk. It's dense, gritty, and tastes like it's been baked with a side of sand. Still, it's fuel for the day ahead. The crowd thickens near the palace, and you hear snippets of gossip. Cleopatra's meeting Roman envoys today, maybe even flirting her way into a trade deal. She's famous for her charm, speaking 9 languages and dazzling everyone from merchants to Caesar himself. A light breeze carries the Nile's earthy scent, and you feel the city's pulse quicken. You're almost at the palace now, ready to see Cleopatra in action, but part of you wonders if you're ready for the intrigue, or if you'll end up as a footnote in her story. You stand before the towering gates of Cleopatra's palace, their bronze surfaces catching the morning sun like a mirror for the gods. The air's thick with the scent of jasmine and wax from nearby braziers, and you feel like you wandered onto a movie set with a budget's unlimited. The sphinxes flanking the entrance stare down, their stone faces daring you to belong here. You don't, obviously. You're just a time traveler gawking at the opulence, hoping not to trip over your own sandals. The guards, with their coal-lined eyes and spears sharper than your wit, gnawed you through, but you swear one of them smirks like he knows you're out of your depth. Stepping into the palace courtyard, you're hit by a wave of sensory overload. Marble columns rise like polished giants, inlaid with turquoise and gold that shimmer in the light. Fountains bubble, their water catching rainbows, and peacocks strut across mosaic floors depicting Nile gods and mythical beasts. You nearly step on one's tail. Bad move, since these birds are basically Cleopatra's Instagram influencers, flaunting her wealth. The courtyard buzzes with servants carrying silver trays of dates and wine, their linen tunics swishing as they dart past. You catch a whiff of myrrh from somewhere, probably incense to keep the vibe divine. You're guided toward the throne room, but it's not a straight shot. The palace is a labyrinth of open-air corridors, each lined with statues of gods and Ptolemy's past. You pass a bust of Alexander the Great, Cleopatra's ancestor, looking smug as if he knows he founded the city. Historical fact: Alexandria was indeed his brainchild, established in 331 BC as a Greek-Egyptian fusion, and Cleopatra's milking that legacy to keep her throne secure. You notice a quirky detail etched into a wall, a tiny carving of a cat chasing a mouse, probably some ancient artist joke. Bet it got a chuckle from the masons, though you wonder if Cleopatra ever noticed it. The air grows cooler as you enter a shaded colonnade, where nobles in flowing robes gossip in hushed Greek. You catch fragments, Rome's demanding more grain, she'll charm them blind. Cleopatra's balancing act with Rome is no secret. She's Egypt's last independent ruler, and every move is a chess play against Caesar or his cronies. Historians still argue whether her flirtations with Rome were pure strategy or if she genuinely vibed with guys like Julius Caesar. You're not sure, but you're dying to see her in action. A servant offers you a cup of water wine. Tastes like grape juice left in the sun too long, but you sip politely. You pass a garden where lotus flowers float in a pool, their petals bright against the dark water. A musician strums a lyre, the notes soft and hypnotic, like an ASMR playlist designed to make you forget Rome's warships circling the harbor. You spot a noble woman applying coal with a tiny stick, her mirror reflecting a face that's probably spent hours on makeup. Fun tidbit: Egyptian makeup wasn't just vanity. Coal doubled as bug repellent and sunblock. You're tempted to try some, but the thought of lead-based eyeliner makes you rethink your life choices. The throne room's entrance looms ahead, its cedar doors carved with scenes of Isis and Horus. You hear voices inside, clipped formal with a hint of tension. Your pulse quickens. Cleopatra's in there, probably dazzling someone with her wit or staring them down like they're yesterday's papyrus. You pause by a fountain, watching a servant scatter rose petals into the water. It's a small ritual, maybe to honor the goddess Isis, whom Cleopatra channels as a living deity. The petals swirl, and you feel the weight of this place. Every corner screams power, every gesture calculated. You're just a fly on the wall. But even you can tell this court's a stage, and Cleopatra's the star. A guard nudges you forward, his spear clinking against his armor. You're not sure if you're allowed to gawk this long, but who's going to stop you? The palace feels alive, like it's watching you back. You pass a tapestry showing Cleopatra as Isis, her eyes painted so vividly you half expect them to blink. A light joke pops into your head. If Cleopatra's Wi-Fi password was Goddess 123, you bet she'd still make you bow to log in. The thought makes you grin, but you wipe it off fast. Those guards don't look like they appreciate humor. As you near the throne room, the air shifts, charged with anticipation. You hear laughter, sharp and deliberate, cutting to the murmur of voices. That's got to be her. Your sandals scuff the marble, and you straighten up, trying to look like you belong. The doors creak open, and you catch a glimpse of gold. Her throne, maybe, or her jewelry. The day's just starting, but you're already neck-deep in Cleopatra's world, where every step feels like a gamble. You take a breath, ready to see the queen herself, hoping you don't faint from the sheer vibe of it all. You slip into the throne room, and it's like walking into a fevered dream of gold and power. The space is vast, with alabaster walls catching the morning light through high, clear-story windows. Cleopatra lounges on a throne of ebony and gold, her gown a cascade of pleated linen that shimmers like liquid moonlight. You're struck by her presence. Not just a crown or the kohl-rimmed eyes, but the way she commands a room with a single arched brow. Advisors and envoys orbit her like planets. Their voice is a low hum of Greek, Egyptian, and Latin. You hover near a pillar, try to blend in. But let's be real, you're about as subtle as a camel in a toga. The morning council's in full swing, and you're catching Cleopatra at her sharpest. She's dissecting a trade dispute with Syrian envoy, her voice smooth but laced with steel. Historical fact: Cleopatra was a master linguist, fluent in 9 languages, including Egyptian, which won her major points with the locals unlike her Greek-heavy Ptolemaic kin. You watch her lean forward, gesturing with fan of ostrich feathers, and the envoy stammers. She's not just talking. She's performing, every word a calculated move to keep Egypt's economy humming. You're half expecting her to pull out a PowerPoint, but nah, she's got this on charisma alone. A quirky tidbit catches your ear. One advisor mentions a new perfume Cleopatra's testing, made from lotus and crocodile fat. Apparently, it's the hottest trend in Alexandria, though you're wondering who's brave enough to rub reptile grease on their neck. The room's a swirl of activity. Scribes scribble on papyrus, a servant refills wine goblets, and a pet monkey, yes, really, swings from a curtain rod, nearly knocking over a brazier. You stifle a laugh. Imagine explaining that insurance claim. The monkey's chaos adds a weird charm, like Cleopatra's court is 1 part strategy, 1 part circus. You notice a Roman envoy, his toga crisp, but his face sweaty, trying to negotiate grain shipments. Cleopatra is playing like a liar, her smile disarming but her question sharp. Historians still argue whether her charm was mostly political theater, or she genuinely enjoyed these verbal duels. You're betting on both. She's too smart to not have fun with it. She tosses out a quip about Roman bread being tougher than their legions, and the room chuckles. You're impressed. She's got the vibe of a late-night host who could also run a country. The air smells of incense and ambition, with a hint of roasted sesame from a tray of snacks being passed around. You snag a honeyed fig, and it's so sweet it makes your teeth ache. Definitely not keto-friendly, But who cares? The council shift to taxes, and you zone out a bit, distracted by the throne room's details. The floor's a mosaic of Nile scenes, with hippos and crocodiles, so lifelike you double-check your feet aren't wet. A breeze carries the scent of the sea through the windows, reminding you Alexandria's a port city, always balancing trade and survival. You sidle closer to a group of advisors whispering about Ptolemy, Cleopatra's brother/caruler. The guy's barely a teen, and from their tone, he's more puppet than king. You catch a sarcastic comment about his strategic naps during council meetings, and you bite your lip to keep from snorting. Cleopatra's running the show, no question, but she's got to keep him sweet to avoid a family feud. It's like a royal soap opera, and you're hooked. A servant glares at you. Oops, maybe you're standing too close to the fancy wine. You shuffle back, pretending to admire a statue of Anubis. The meeting wraps with Cleopatra issuing orders in Egyptian, her voice low and melodic, like she's soothing a restless crowd. The advisors bow. The Roman envoy looks like he needs a nap, and you're just trying not to trip over a rug. She rises, her jewelry clinking softly, and heads toward a side chamber. You're not invited, but the day's far from over. The council's done, but Cleopatra's next move is a spectacle on the Nile, and you're tagging along, hoping to keep up with her whirlwind energy. For now, you linger, soaking in the throne room's glow, wondering how one woman keeps this chaotic court spinning without losing her cool. You're swept along with a gaggle of courtiers, weaving to the palace's open-air corridors toward the Nile's edge, where Cleopatra's latest spectacle awaits. The air's warm, heavy with the river's earthy scent, and you catch a whiff of something sweeter, lotus maybe, or that crocodile fat perfume you're still not sold on. The crowd's buzzing, their sandals scuffing the stone path as you reach the royal docks. There, bobbing on the Nile's glassy surface, is Cleopatra's barge, a floating palace that makes your jaw drop. It's draped in purple sails, gilded oars gleaming, and the deck strewn with rose petals like someone spilled a florist's shop. You're half expecting a DJ to start spinning, but instead, musicians pluck harps, their notes drifting like a lullaby. You step aboard, the wood creaking underfoot, and it's like entering a five-star resort with an ancient Egyptian twist. Servants offer you a gobble of date wine, sweet, sticky, and strong enough to make you wobble. Historical fact: Cleopatra's barges were legendary, with Plutarch describing one decked out with silver and gold, used to dazzle visitors like Mark Antony. This one's no less extra, with silk canopies fluttering and incense burners puffing clouds of myrrh. You lean against a railing. Try not to spill your drink as the barge glides forward, the Nile's current gentle but insistent. A quirky tidbit floats your way. The rowers, all bare-chested and synchronized, are slathered in a sunscreen paste made from ochre and, yep, more crocodile dung. You're starting to think Cleopatra's got a side hustle in reptile skincare. The stuff's supposed to protect them from the sun's wrath, but you're just glad you're not rowing. You chuckle, imagining a modern influencer pitching Nile Glow Cream on Instagram. Probably wouldn't go viral. The barge's deck is alive with nobles, their jewelry clinking as they gossip about Rome's latest demands. You catch a glimpse of Cleopatra at the prow, her silhouette framed by the sun, looking like she's posing for a coin. She's not just here for the vibes. This river trip's a power move, a chance to show off Egypt's wealth and charm allies. You overhear a Greek merchant muttering about her seductive diplomacy, and you can't help but grin. Cleopatra's flirting game is basically statecraft. Historians still argue whether her charm was mostly calculated or she genuinely enjoyed the banter with foreign VIPs. You're betting she loved the thrill, like a chess player who knows they're 3 moves ahead. She turns, catching someone's eye with a smile that could launch 1,000 ships, or at least a trade deal. The Nile's banks slide past, lined with palm trees and mud brick villages. You spot kids splashing in the shallows, waving at the barge like a parade float. A heron swoops low, skimming the water, and you feel the barge's gentle sway, like a cradle rocking you to sleep. The musicians shift to a slower tune, and you sink into a cushioned bench, the silk cool against your skin. A servant offers you a plate of roasted pigeon. Tastes like gamey chicken, but you're not complaining. You're too busy soaking in the scene. Nobles laughing, wine flowing, and Cleopatra working the crowd like a pro. A light breeze carries the scent of reeds and something faintly floral, maybe from the garlands draped over the railings. You notice a noble woman fanning herself with peacock feathers, her coals smudged from the heat. You're tempted to joke that she looks like she's auditioning for a Cleopatra cosplay. But you keep it to yourself. Those guards nearby don't seem like comedy fans. The barge passes a temple, its stone walls carved with hieroglyphs, and you feel the weight of history. This isn't just a boat ride. It's a floating stage for Egypt's queen to flex her power. As the sun climbs higher, the deck grows warmer, and you find a shady spot under a canopy. Cleopatra's voice carries over the chatter, light but commanding, as she chats with a Nubian envoy about gold shipments. You're struck by how effortlessly she shifts from charm to authority, like flipping a switch. The barge's oars dip rhythmically, and you let the sound lull you, the wine making your eyelids heavy. You're just a guest on this floating extravaganza, but for a moment, you feel the Nile's pulse, the heartbeat of Cleopatra's world, pulling you deeper into her spell. You're still on Cleopatra's gilded barge, the Nile's gentle ripples rocking you as the sun blazes overhead. The purple sails snap in a breeze, and the air is thick with myrrh and the faint tang of river mud. Cleopatra's at the center of it all, lounging on a cushioned dais, her gold armlets glinting as she gestures to a cluster of foreign dignitaries. You're nursing your second goblet of date wine. Try to look like you belong among the silk-clad nobles, but you're pretty sure your sandals scream tourists. The scene's a masterclass in political flirting, and Cleopatra's a maestro, her every word a calculated dance to keep Egypt on top. She's charming a Roman envoy now, his toga stiff with importance, but his face flushed from her attention. Historical fact: Cleopatra's alliances with Rome, especially with figures like Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony, were key to Egypt's survival against Roman expansion. She leans forward, her voice low and teasing, asking about Rome's grain taxes with a smile that could melt bronze. The envoy stumbles over his words, and you can't help but smirk. Poor guy didn't stand a chance. You're tempted to whisper, "Get a grip, dude," but you'd rather not get tossed overboard. A quirky tidbit catches your ear. Cleopatra is serving a rare wine infused with saffron, supposedly an aphrodisiac. The nobles are sipping it like it's liquid gold, and you wonder if it's less about romance and more about her flexing Egypt's wealth. You take a sip, tastes like spicy grape juice, not exactly Cupid's arrow. The barge's deck is a swirl of color, with envoys from Nubia, Syria, and Judea mingling, their robes a patchwork of cultures. Cleopatra switches languages effortlessly, tossing out a quip in Greek that makes a merchant laugh so hard he spills his drink. You're impressed. She's like a diplomat with a stand-up routine. The conversation shifts to trade routes, and you catch the undercurrent of tension. Rome's hungry for Egypt's grain, but Cleopatra is pushing for better terms. Her tone sweet but unyielding. Historians still argue whether her flirtations were purely strategic, or she enjoyed the personal spark with men like Antony. You're leaning toward both. She's too sharp not to play the game, but too human not to relish the win. A Nubian envoy offers her a gift, a carved ivory comb, and she accepts it with an awe that feels like a royal Instagram-like. You wander the barge's edge, watching the Nile's banks glide by, reeds swaying, a crocodile's eyes just above the water. You shudder, hoping it's not eyeing you for lunch. A servant passes with a tray of honeyed almonds, and you grab a handful, crunching as you eavesdrop. The Romans now boasting about Caesar's conquests, but Cleopatra counters with a witty jab about Roman roads being less impressive than her river. The crowd chuckles, and you do too. Imagine her roasting him on Twitter. The vibe's light, but the stakes are high. Every laugh is a step toward securing Egypt's edge. The musicians strike up a new tune, flutes weaving with a harp's soft strum, and you feel the barge's rhythm sync with your pulse. A noble woman nearby adjusts her wig, muttering about the heat, and you stifle a grin. She looks like she's one breeze away from a wardrobe malfunction. The sun's climbing, and the canopy's shade feels like a hug. You spot a kid on the shore, waving at the barge, and you wave back, feeling briefly like royalty. Cleopatra is still working the crowd, her laughter ringing out, and you realize she's not just a queen, she's a performer, keeping every eye on her. A light breeze carries the scent of lotus flowers, and you lean back, letting the wine and music blur the edges of the moment. The barge's oars dip steadily, and you're half tempted to nap, but there's no way you're missing this. Cleopatra is wrapping up with the Roman, her hand brushing his arm as she makes a point about tariffs. It's subtle, deliberate, and you're in awe of how she wields charm like a scepter. The day's heating up, and so is a political game. You're just along for the ride, but you feel the Nile's current pulling you deeper into her world, where every smile could shift an empire. You're still gliding along the Nile on Cleopatra's extravagant barge, but now the sun's high, and the deck's transforming into a banquet scene straight out of a Hollywood epic. Servants weave through the crowd, balancing trays of roasted quail, figs dripping with honey, and bread studded with sesame seeds. The air's a heady mix of grilled meat, sweet wine, and that ever-present myrrh incense, which is starting to feel like Cleopatra's signature scent. You find a spot near a silk-draped table, trying not to look too eager as you snag a spice date. It's like biting into a sugar bomb, and you're not mad about it. The barge sways gently, and you're wondering if you're tipsy from the wine or just the sheer excess of it all. Cleopatra is at the heart of the feast, reclining on a couch pile with cushions, her gold jewelry catching the sunlight like tiny mirrors. She's laughing with Syrian merchant, her voice carrying over the chatter, and you can tell she's still working the room, even mid-bite. Historical fact: Cleopatra's banquets were diplomatic tools designed to impress allies with Egypt's wealth and hospitality, often costing more than a small city's annual budget. You watch her offer a Nubian envoy a slice of pomegranate, her gesture so graceful it's practically choreography. The guy's clearly smitten, and you can't blame him. She's got charisma that could sell sand in the desert. A quirky tidbit floats your way. The servants are spritzing rose water into the air to keep the guests cool, but some swear it's mixed with secret herb to enhance loyalty. You roll your eyes. Sounds like ancient aromatherapy nonsense, but you wouldn't put it past Cleopatra to try it. You grab a piece of roasted quail, and it's so tender you almost forget you're eating a bird that probably pecked at Nile mud yesterday. A light joke pops into your head. If Cleopatra's feast had a Yelp page, they get 5 stars for vibes, but a warning for bankruptcy-level pricing. You smirk, hoping no one notices you're basically a food critic in a tunic. The banquet's a sensory overload. Musicians strum lyres, dancers swirl in linen veils, and the crowd's a mix of laughter and whispered deals. You overhear a Greek diplomat griping about Rome's tariffs, and Cleopatra's quick to counter with a quip about Roman wine tasting like vinegar. The table roars and you're impressed. She's roasting empires while passing the bread. Historians still argue whether these feasts were more about diplomacy or showing off, but you're betting Cleopatra knew exactly how to blend both. She's playing host, queen, and strategist, all while sipping wine like it's just another Tuesday. You wander to a table laden with exotic delicacies. Crocodile meat, apparently, which you politely decline after that whole dung sunscreen revelation. Instead, you try a honey-drizzled pastry that's so flaky it crumbles in your hands, leaving you look like a toddler at a bake sale. A servant hands you a linen napkin with a raised eyebrow, and you mutter a thanks, feeling like you failed some ancient etiquette test. The Nile's banks glide past, dotted with farmers and ibises, and you feel the barge's rhythm, steady as a heartbeat. It's easy to get lost in the moment, but the undercurrent of politics keeps you sharp. Cleopatra is now chatting with Judean envoy, her tone light, but her questions pointed. Something about spice routes and loyalty to Egypt. You're struck by how she makes every guest feel like the only one in the room, a trick you wish you could steal for awkward Zoom calls. A dancer spins nearby, her anklets jingling, and you're momentarily distracted by the way her veil catches the light. You joke to yourself that if you try that move, you'd trip and end up in the Nile with the crocodiles. The crowd's loosening up, wine flowing freely, but you notice Cleopatra's barely touched her goblet, always in control, even at a party. The sun's starting to dip, casting a golden glow over the deck, and you find a shady corner to catch your breath. The feast still in full swing, with laughter and music blending into a dreamy hum. You munch on another date, savoring the sweetness, and watch Cleopatra work her magic. This isn't just lunch, it's a stage, and she's directing every moment. You're just a guest, but you feel the pull of her world, where every bite and smile is part of a bigger game. The barge drifts on, and you're ready for whatever's next, hoping your stomach can keep up with Cleopatra's extravagance. You're still on Cleopatra's barge, the Nile's gentle sway lulling you as the midday feast winds down, leaving a haze of wine and laughter. The sun's relentless now, and you're grateful for the silk canopy shielding you from its glare. Servants clear away plates of half-eaten quail and sticky fig remnants, their movements swift and silent, like ghosts in linen tunics. You're nursing a goblet of watered wine, trying to look casual, but the barge's opulence makes you feel like you're crashing a royal wedding. The crowd's thinned slightly. Some nobles are napping on cushioned benches, others whispering in tight clusters. That's when you notice a shift in the air, a subtle tension, like the moment before a storm breaks. Intrigue's brewing, and you're about to get a front row seat. You sidle closer to a group of courtiers huddled near the barge's stern, their voices low, faces half hidden by goblets. They're plotting something, and it's not about who gets the last honey pastry. You catch snippets. Talk of Ptolemy, Cleopatra's kid brother and co-ruler, and how he's too young to notice certain moves. Historical fact: Cleopatra's court was a hotbed of conspiracy, with her siblings often pawns or threats in the Ptolemaic power game. She'd already outmaneuvered one brother, Ptolemy XIII, to secure her throne. These whispers hint at someone trying to stir the pot, maybe to weaken her grip. You lean in, pretending to adjust your sandal, but servant's glare makes you straighten up fast. Eavesdropping's clearly not on the guest list. A quirky tidbit floats through the murmurs. One courtier mentions a charm made of crocodile teeth, supposedly hidden in Ptolemy's chambers to curse his judgment. You stifle a chuckle. Imagine trying to pitch that on Etsy as royal voodoo bling. Superstition's rife here, and you're starting to see why Cleopatra's always one step ahead. She's got to dodge magical nonsense alongside real knives. The group disperses as a guard strolls by, and you're left wondering who's loyal and who's got a papyrus with a hit list. The barge's music shifts to a slower harp melody, almost masking the tension, but you're hooked, eyes darting for more clues. You wander toward the deck's edge, the Nile's muddy waters glinting below. A fisherman on the bank waves, oblivious to the high-stakes drama you're sniffing out. Cleopatra is still at the prow, charming a Greek envoy, but you notice her glance flicker toward the whispering courtiers. She knows. Of course she does. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra's paranoia about plots was justified, or she just played the game better than anyone. You're betting on the latter. She's not the type to miss a snake in the grass, literal or otherwise. You sip your wine, wishing it was coffee to keep your wits sharp in this den of intrigue. A light breeze carries the scent of lotus and river reeds, and you spot a noble slipping a folded papyrus to another, their hands quick as thieves. You joke to yourself that it's probably just a grocery list. Pick up more myrrh, betray Queen later, but your gut says it's trouble. The barge passes a temple, its priests chanting faintly across the water, and you wonder they're praying for Cleopatra or her enemies. The air is thick with secrets, and you're just a fly on the wall, trying not to get swatted. A servant offers you a pomegranate slice, and you take it, the juice tar on your tongue, grounding you in the moment. Cleopatra's laughter rings out, sharp and deliberate, pulling eyes back to her. She's redirecting the mood, like a DJ switching tracks. But you're not fooled. The whispers haven't stopped, just gone quieter. You notice a young scribe, barely older than Ptolemy, scribbling furiously, maybe noting who's talking to whom. You're tempted to ask him for the tea, but his nervous glance says he's not spilling. Another joke hits you. If Cleopatra's court had a group chat, it'd be 90% memes about betrayal and 10% cat worship. You grin, but keep it low-key. The guards are still circling like hawks. The barge's oars dip rhythmically, and you lean against a railing, watching the Nile's bank slide by, villages, palms, a lone ibis stalking fish. The intrigue's got your pulse up, but the wine and music are tugging you toward a nap. Cleopatra is still working the crowd, her smile a mask for whatever she's plotting in return. You're just a guest in this Game of Thrones, but you feel the weight of every whisper, every glance. The day is far from over, and you're bracing for whatever shadows Cleopatra's court throws next, hoping you don't trip over a plot or a crocodile on your way out. You're back on solid ground, the Nile's gentle rocking replaced by the warm stone of Alexandria's streets under your sandals. The barge is docked near a towering temple, its limestone walls glowing in the late morning sun, and you're following a procession toward its entrance. Cleopatra's at the head, her linen gown trailing like a comet's tail, flanked by priests in white kilts chanting hymns to Isis. The air is thick with frankincense, so heavy it's like breathing a perfume shop. You're trying to keep up, but the crowd's a mix of reverent locals and curious nobles, and you're dodging elbows while hoping not to trip over a sacred cat. Those things are basically royalty here. Inside the temple, the mood shifts to something hushed, almost electric. The walls are carved with hieroglyphs, depicting Isis cradling Horus, and flickering oil lamps cast shadows that dance like spirits. Cleopatra is not just queen today. She's playing a role of Isis incarnate, a living goddess. Historical fact. Cleopatra leaned hard into her divine image, associating herself with Isis to cement her legitimacy among Egyptians, a move her Greek ancestors rarely bothered with. She kneels before an altar, offering a golden lotus, and the priest chants rise, their voices echoing off the stone. You're struck by the theater of it all. She's not just praying. She's performing for her people. A quirky tidbit catches your attention. One priest sprinkles the altar with Nile water mixed with natron, a salt said to purify, but also used in mummification. You chuckle under your breath. Imagine the temple's Yelp review. Great vibes, but smells like a funeral home. The ritual's mesmerizing, though, with incense curling upward and Cleopatra's voice joining the chant, low and melodic. You're half expecting a Hollywood soundtrack to kick in, but the only music is the priest's rhythmic clapping and the faint hum of a distant flute. You're just a bystander, but the air feels charged, like you're witnessing something bigger than yourself. The crowd sways, some murmuring prayers, others watching Cleopatra, like she's the second coming of the Nile itself. You notice a noble woman clutching an amulet, probably hoping for divine favor, or maybe just a better seat at the next banquet. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra believed in her own divinity, or if it was all a political flex to keep the priests and people loyal. You're betting she played both sides, smart enough to know the power of belief, human enough to wink at the absurdity. You catch her eye for a split second, and her slight smile makes you wonder if she's reading your mind. You step closer to the altar, the stone cool underfoot, and catch a whiff of myrrh so strong it makes your eyes water. A priest hands you a small clay lamp to offer, and you fumble it, nearly dropping it. Smooth move, time traveler. You set it down carefully, feeling like you're in a sacred escape room with no clues. The ritual continues, with Cleopatra pouring wine into a silver bowl, the red liquid glinting like blood in the lamplight. It's a reminder that this isn't just spiritual. It's political, tying her to Egypt's gods and its people in one deft move. Outside, the sun's climbing, and you hear the distant bustle of Alexandria, vendors shouting, donkeys braying. A light joke pops into your head. If Cleopatra's divine, her morning routine probably includes smite enemies between breakfast and eyeliner. You grin, but keep it to yourself. The priests look like they'd frown on sarcasm. The crowd begins to file out, and you linger, watching Cleopatra whisper to a high priest. Is she securing their loyalty or just asking for extra incense? You'll never know, but the secrecy feels like a callback to those barge whispers. Her court's never short on schemes. The temple's cool darkness clings to you as you step back into the sunlight, blinking at the glare. The procession's moving back toward the palace, and you're swept along, your sandals scuffing the dust. Cleopatra's ahead, her figure radiant even in the crowd, and you feel the pull of her world, part divine, part deadly. The rituals are over, but the day's far from done. You're bracing for the next act, hoping you can keep up with her divine hustle without tripping over your own awe or another cat. You're back in the palace, the temple's incense still clinging to your clothes as you trail behind the crowd into a shaded audience chamber. The afternoon sun filters through lattice screens, casting patterns on a marble floor that look like hieroglyphs come to life. Cleopatra's already seated on a low dais, her gown swapped for one with gold embroidery that catches every ray. She's surrounded by ambassadors, Greeks, Romans, a Parthian with a beard that could double as a bird's nest, and the air's thick with the scent of sandalwood and diplomatic tension. You find a spot near a column, trying to look like you're not eavesdropping, but let's be honest, you're all ears, hoping to catch Cleopatra's next masterclass in political dance. She's negotiating now, her voice smooth as Nile silt, discussing grain shipments with a Roman envoy who's sweating through his toga. Historical fact: Egypt's grain was Rome's lifeblood, supplying up to a third of the city's food by Cleopatra's time, giving her serious leverage in these talks. She leans forward, her fan of ostrich feathers flicking like a cat's tail, and asks about Roman troop movements with a smile that's all honey and no sting. The envoy stammers, clearly outmatched, and you can't help but think she's playing chess while he's stuck on checkers. You're tempted to whisper, "Buddy, just surrender," but you'd rather not end up as crocodile bait. A quirky tidbit catches your ear. One of Cleopatra's scribes is using a reed pen dipped in ink made from crush beetles, giving the papyrus a faint red shimmer. You chuckle, imagine pitching bug juice ink on Shark Tank. It's a small detail, but it screams Egypt's flair for extravagance, even in paperwork. The chamber's a swirl of languages, Greek, Latin, Aramaic, and Cleopatra switches between them like she's flipping through Spotify playlists. A Parthian ambassador tries to haggle over silk tariffs, and she counters with a quip about his horses being slower than her barges. The room laughs, and you do too. She's out to will a late-night host with the stakes of an emperor. The diplomacy's a dance, each step calculated. She offers a Greek ambassador a gift, a silver amulet of Isis, and you notice how he beams, probably thinking he's won her favor. But you see her eyes, sharp as obsidian, tracking his reaction. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra's gift-giving was genuine generosity or weighted by loyalty, while spending her real power, grain and gold. You're betting it's the latter. She's too savvy to give without getting. You grab a cup of watered wine from a passing servant. The taste sharp and fruity, and it keeps you alert as the talks heat up. A light breeze carries a scent of jasmine through the screens, and you notice a noble woman fanning herself, her coals smudged from the heat. You joke to yourself that she looks like she's one hot minute away from inventing air conditioning. The chamber's buzzing, but there's an undercurrent of unease. Someone mentions Ptolemy's absence, and heads turn. Cleopatra brushes it off with a laugh, saying her brother's studying strategy, but you catch a flicker in her gaze. She's playing a long game, balancing allies and family drama, while keeping Rome at arm's length. You wander closer to a table laden with pomegranates and almonds, snagging a few to munch on. The crunch is loud enough to earn a glare from a scribe, and you mutter an apology, feeling like you've disrupted a TED Talk. The ambassadors keep talking. Trade routes, taxes, alliances, and Cleopatra steering all, her voice calm, but her questions cutting. You're in awe of how she juggles these egos, making each envoy feel special while never losing her grip on Egypt's interests. A Roman mentions Caesar, and she nods, her smile unreadable. You're dying to know what she really thinks of him, lover, ally, or just another pawn. The afternoon's wearing on, and the chamber's getting stuffy. You step toward a window, catching a glimpse of the Nile sparkling outside. The talks are winding down, but Cleopatra's energy hasn't flagged. She's already beckoning a servant to prepare for the evening's plans. You're just a fly on the wall, but you feel the weight of her world, where every word is a weapon and every gift a gambit. The day's moving fast, and you're bracing for the next act, hoping you can keep up with her relentless pace without tripping over your own sandals or her schemes. You're back on the Nile, the barge gliding through the water as the sun dips low, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. The air's cooler now, carrying the scent of reeds and the faint musk of the river itself. Cleopatra's floating palace is quieter than before, the midday feast's chaos replaced by a softer hum of conversation and music. You're leaning against a railing, the polish would warm under your hands, watching the twilight settle over the Nile like a velvet cloak. The purple sails catch the fading light, and the oars dip rhythmically, their splashes blending with the strum of a lyre. You're half tempted to close your eyes and drift off, but Cleopatra's presence, sharp, magnetic, keeps you tethered to the moment. She's at the barge's center, reclining on a couch draped with leopard skins, her silhouette framed by the sunset. She's chatting with a small group of nobles, her laughter light but deliberate, like she's conducting an orchestra of charm. Historical fact: Cleopatra used these evening Nile cruises to solidify alliances, leveraging Egypt's mystique to dazzle guests, as Plutarch noted in his accounts of her lavish displays from Mark Antony. Tonight's no different. She's hosting a mix of local elites and a Judean envoy, her voice weaving through Greek and Aramaic with ease. You catch her tossing a playful jab about the envoy's wine being weaker than Nile water, and the group chuckles. You grin, thinking she'd slay on a comedy stage. A quirky tidbit floats your way. The servant are burning a rare incense made from cinnamon and myrrh, said to inspire trust. You roll your eyes. Sounds like ancient aromatherapy marketing, but you're not immune to the warm, spicy scent wrapping around you like a hug. You snag a cup of pomegranate juice from a passing tray, its tartness waking you up. The barge passes a cluster of papyrus reeds, their tips glowing in the dusk, and you spot a heron gliding low, its wings brushing the water. It's serene, but you know this calms the stage for Cleopatra's next move. She's deep in conversation now, her fan of peacock feathers flicking as she presses the Judean envoy on trade routes. Her questions are soft but pointed, like arrows wrapped in silk. Historians still argue whether these evening soirees were purely strategic, or if Cleopatra enjoyed the social game as much as the political one. You're betting she loved both. Her smile's too genuine, but her eyes miss nothing. You notice a noble whispering to another, their glances darting toward her. Callbacks to those barge whispers from earlier. Remember Crocodile Tooth charm? Make you wonder if intrigue's still simmering even in this golden glow. The musicians shift to a slower tune, flutes weaving with the harp's gentle pluck, and you feel your shoulders relax. A servant offers you a plate of honeyed lotus seeds, crunchy, sweet, and weirdly addictive. You munch, try not to drop any on your tunic, but a noble woman nearby gives you a look like you've committed a crime. You joke to yourself that if this were a modern party, you'd be the guy spilling chips on the carpet. The Nile's banks are quieter now, dotted with flickering village fires, and you feel the barges sway, like a lullaby rocking you toward sleep. Cleopatra's voice pulls you back, sharp and teasing, as she challenges a noble's claim about grain yields. You're in awe of how she balances charm and command, making everyone feel seen while steering the conversation. A light breeze carries the scent of water and flowers, and you lean back, watching the stars begin to prick the sky. The barge's lanterns flicker, casting golden pools on the deck, and you spot a guard eyeing the crowd, his spear glinting. Even in this dreamy twilight, the edge of danger lingers. Cleopatra's world never fully lets its guard down. You find a cushioned bench, sinking into it as the music and wine blur the edges of the evening. Cleopatra is still holding court, her laughter a beacon in the dusk. You're just a guest, but you feel the Nile's pull, its current tying you to her world of beauty and scheming. The night's young, and you're bracing for whatever comes next, hoping you can keep your eyes open long enough to see her next play, or at least avoid spilling your juice. The Nile's twilight glow has deepened into a starlit night, and you're still on Cleopatra's barge, the air now cool and laced with the scent of jasmine and wax from flickering lanterns. The deck's alive with a new energy. Musicians have swapped their sleepy flutes for livelier lutes, and dancers in gauzy linen swirl across the polished wood, their anklets jingling like tiny bells. You're perched on a cushioned bench, clutching a goblet of spiced wine that started to taste like a questionable life choice. Cleopatra's at the heart of it all, her laughter cutting to the music like a blade, sharp and captivating. You're trying to keep up, but the vibe's so electric you half expect the barge to start glowing. She's hosting an impromptu performance now, a mix of music, dance, and her own witty commentary that's got the crowd hanging on every word. Historical fact: Cleopatra was known for her intellectual salons, where she dazzled guests with poetry, music, and debates, as recorded by ancient writers like Plutarch, who noted her irresistible charm. She's in her element, tossing out a quip about a Greek poet's tragic beard, and the nobles roar with laughter. You chuckle, too, thinking she'd probably roast modern influencers with the same flair. A dancer spins past, her veil brushing her arm, and you're momentarily distracted, until you realize you've spilled a drop of wine on your tunic. Smooth. A quirky tidbit catches your attention. One of the musicians is playing a sistrum, a rattle-like instrument sacred to Isis, supposedly to ward off bad spirits. You smirk. Imagine trying to market that as Ghost Be Gone at a temple gift shop. The sistrum's metallic jangle weaves into the music, and you feel the rhythm in your bones, like the Nile's pulse. Cleopatra claps along, her gold bracelets clinking, and invites a Nubian envoy to join the dancers. He tries, bless him, but his moves are more dad at a wedding than divine, and you bite your lip to keep from laughing. Gotta give him points for effort. The crowd's looser now, wine flowing and voices louder, but you notice Cleopatra is still sharp, her eyes scanning the guests like a hawk. She's bantering with a Syrian merchant about star navigation, dropping astronomy facts like she's been binge-watching Cosmos. Historians still argue whether her intellectual flexes were genuine passion, or just another layer of her diplomatic game. You're betting it's both. She's too curious to fake entirely, but too clever not to use it. You sip your wine, wincing at the spice, and wonder how she keeps up this pace without a nap. A servant passes with a tray of sesame cakes, and you grab one, the crunch grounding you in the moment. The barge sways gently, and you spot the Nile's banks, now dark but for the flicker of village fires. A light breeze carries the scent of water and lotus, and you lean back, watching it dance a twirl under a lantern's glow. You joke to yourself that if you tried dancing, you'd probably trip into the Nile and become crocodile chow. The thought makes you grin, but you keep it low-key. Those guards are still lurking, their spears glinting like they're auditioning for a villain role. Cleopatra is now reciting a line of poetry, something about the stars and eternity, and the crowd quiets, hanging on her words. You're struck by how she turns a party into a performance. Every gesture a brushstroke in her legend. A noble whispers something to another, and you catch a familiar tension, a callback to those earlier barge plots. Remember Crocodile Tooth Charm? Intrigues never far, even amid the revelry. You notice a scribe scribbling nearby, maybe noting who's laughing too loud or dancing too close. You're just a guest, but you feel the undercurrent, like a river beneath the river. The music swells, and Cleopatra joins the dancers for a moment, her movements fluid and deliberate, like she's channeling Isis herself. The crowd cheers, and you clap too, caught up in the spell. The night's in full swing, but you're starting to feel the wine in the hour, your eyelids heavy. Cleopatra is still radiant, her energy a beacon in the dark. You're just along for the ride, swept up in her world of music, wit, and hidden knives, hoping you can stay awake for whatever's next, or at least not spill more wine. The barge has docked, and you're back in the palace. The night air cool against your skin as you slip into a dimly lit corridor. The revelry's faded, replaced by a hushed intensity, like the calm before a desert storm. You're following a small group of shadowed figures, courtiers, you think, moving toward a secluded chamber, their whispers sharp and urgent. The walls are lined with flickering oil lamps, casting long shadows that twist like secrets. You're trying to blend in, your sandals silent on the marble, but you feel like an extra in a spy thriller, hoping no one notices you're not on the guest list. The scent of myrrh lingers, mixed with something earthier, maybe the Nile's echo or just your nerves. You catch snippets of conversation, words like Ptolemy and Rome, hissed with a venom that makes your pulse quicken. This is no after-party gossip. It's a late-night conspiracy, the kind that could shift empires. Historical fact. Cleopatra faced constant plots from within her court, especially from factions loyal to her brother Ptolemy XIV, whom she co-ruled with but sidelined to maintain power. You overhear a noble mention a gift for Ptolemy. Poison wine, perhaps, or a subtler scheme. You're not sure, but it's clear someone's playing a dangerous game, and Cleopatra's name is at the center. A quirky tidbit catches your ear. One conspirator mutters about a charm buried under Ptolemy's bed. Made of jackal bones to cloud his mind. You stifle a chuckle. Imagine trying to sell royal hex kits in Alexandria's markets. Superstition's a serious business here, and you're starting to see why Cleopatra's always watching her back. The group pauses at a heavy cedar door, and you duck behind a statue of Anubis, its jackal eyes glinting like it's in on the plot. Your heart's pounding. You're just a time traveler, not a spy. But the thrills got you hooked. The door creaks open, and you glimpse a small room lit by a single brazier. A figure, maybe a scribe, maybe a traitor, passes papyrus to another, their hands quick and furtive. You can't read it from here, but the way they glance around screams guilty. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra orchestrated some of these plots herself to flush out enemies, or she was genuinely surrounded by vipers. You're betting she knew more than she let on. Her survival depended on outsmarting everyone. You shift slightly, and your sandal scuffs the floor. Oops! A guard's head snaps your way, and you freeze, pretending to admire the statue. Close call. A light breeze carries the scent of wax and dust through the corridor, and you hear the distant hum of the palace. Servants cleaning, a lute still playing somewhere. You joke to yourself that if this were a modern thriller, the conspirators would be texting in a group chat called Team Backstab. The thought makes you grin, but you wipe it fast. The guard's still eyeing you like you're a Nile catfish out of water. The group slips into the chamber, and the door shuts, leaving you in the flickering dark, your mind racing with what you've heard. You step back, heart still thumping, and head toward the main hall, hoping to blend into the late-night stragglers. The palace feels alive, its walls whispering with secrets. You pass a servant carrying a tray of empty goblets, her face unreadable, and wonder if she's in on it too. A light joke crosses your mind. If Cleopatra's court had a motto, it'd be trust no one but look fabulous. You're tempted to laugh, but the weight of the moment keeps you quiet. The conspiracy's real, and you're just a bystander, caught in the web of Cleopatra's world. The corridor opens into a courtyard, where stars glitter above and a fountain murmurs softly. You pause, breathing the cool air, trying to shake the unease. Cleopatra's somewhere in this maze, maybe unaware of the plot, or maybe 3 steps ahead. As always, you're not sure, but you feel the pulse of her court, where every shadow hides a scheme. The night's deep now, and you're bracing for whatever comes next, hoping you can stay out of trouble, or at least not trip over another statue in the dark. You've slipped away from the conspiratorial whispers, your heart still racing as you wander deeper into Cleopatra's palace. The night's grown quiet, the revelry of the barge and the intrigue of the shadowed chamber fading into a soft hum of palace life. You find yourself in a private wing, guided by a servant who probably thinks you're a lost noble. The air's cooler here, scented with rosewater and the faint musk of papyrus. The walls are draped with linen curtains, embroidered with lotus flowers, and the flickering light of oil lamps casts a warm glow. You're about to glimpse Cleopatra's private world, a rare peek behind the curtain of her goddess-queen persona, and you're trying not to gawk like a tourist at a VIP lounge. The corridor opens into a small, opulent chamber, Cleopatra's private quarters, or close enough. It's less grand than the throne room, but no less stunning, with a low couch piled with silk cushions, a table strewn with scrolls, and a bronze mirror reflecting the lamplight. You spot a small statue of Isis cradling Horus, a nod to her divine role, and a tray of half-eaten figs. Proof she's human after all. Historical fact. Cleopatra's private life was tightly guarded, but ancient sources like Plutarch suggest she valued moments of solitude to study or plan, balancing her public dazzle with quiet strategy. You're struck by the intimacy of the space. It's like catching a celebrity off-script. A quirky tidbit catches your eye, a tiny glass vial on the table, filled with a green paste that's probably her infamous crocodile dung face mask. Remember that sunscreen from the market? You chuckle softly. Imagine her pitching it as Pharaoh's Glow on a QVC special. You're tempted to touch it, but a servant's sharp glance stops you cold. Instead, you linger near a window, the night air carrying the Nile's earthy scent. Outside, Alexandria's lights flicker like stars falling to earth, and you wonder what Cleopatra thinks about when she's alone here, away from the court's chaos. She's not here now, but you spot signs of her, a half-written papyrus with Greek script, maybe a letter or a poem, and a pair of gold sandals kicked off by the couch. You imagine her pacing, plotting her next move against Rome or her brother Ptolemy. Those conspirators from earlier are still on your mind. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra's private moments were as calculated as her public ones, or if she ever let her guard down. You're betting she kept her edge even in her sleep. Nobody survives this court without a sixth sense for trouble. A servant enters, carrying a tray with a silver goblet and a small bowl of almonds. She sets it down, and you snag a nut, crunching quietly. The taste is rich, almost too perfect, and you joke to yourself that Cleopatra's snacks probably have their own royal decree. The servant doesn't smile. She's all business, and you're starting to feel like you're overstaying your welcome. You move toward a shelf, eyeing a stack of scrolls. One's labeled with cartouche, maybe her name in hieroglyphs, and you're dying to unroll it, but you'd rather not get banished for snooping. The air shifts as a faint laugh echoes from a nearby room. Cleopatra's voice, light but unmistakable. She's not alone. You hear a man's low murmur, maybe an advisor or a lover. You're not close enough to eavesdrop, but the sound a reminder that even her private moments are layered with purpose. A light breeze rustles the curtains, and you catch a whiff of jasmine, grounding you in the moment. You joke to yourself that if Cleopatra's diary existed, it'd be encrypted with a password like Nile Queen 69. The thought makes you grin, but you keep it subtle, the servants still watching. You step toward the door, sensing it's time to move on. The chamber feels like a sanctuary, but it's no less a stage. Every scroll, every sandal, part of Cleopatra's carefully crafted world. You're just a visitor, stealing a glimpse of the woman behind the myth, but you feel the weight of her life, where even quiet moments hum with strategy. The palace stretches out beyond, alive with secrets, and you're ready for the next act, hoping you don't stumble into more trouble or trip over those gold sandals on your way out. You left Cleopatra's private quarters behind, the rose water scent fading as you slip into another shadowed corridor of the palace. The night's deep now, the air cool and heavy with the promise of dawn not far off. You're following the faint murmur of voices, drawn toward a small, torchlit chamber where starlight spills through a high window. The walls are bare but for a single tapestry of falcon-headed Horus, its eyes glinting like it's watching you. You're trying to move quietly, your sandals barely whispering on the stone, but every creak feels like a shout in this hushed space. Cleopatra's here, you can tell. Her voice, low and deliberate, cuts through the stillness, and you're about to eavesdrop on her late-night strategic talks, where empires might shift with single word. You linger near the doorway, half hidden by a curtain, and see her seated at a low table, maps and scrolls spread out like a war room. She's with two advisors, one a grizzled Egyptian general, the other a Greek scribe with ink-stained fingers. They're discussing Rome, their voices tight with urgency. Historical fact: Cleopatra's late-night meetings were critical for navigating Rome's growing power, especially after Julius Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE, which left her scrambling to secure allies like Mark Antony. She's pointing at a map, her gold rings catching the torchlight, questioning troop movements near Syria. You're impressed. She's not just a queen, she's a general in a gown. A quirky tidbit catches your ear. The scribe mentions a star chart Cleopatra consulted at the time of her negotiations, believing certain constellations favor bold moves. You smirk. Imagine her checking her horoscope like, Leo says, charm the Romans. Astrology was big in her court, blending Greek and Egyptian traditions, and you're not surprised she'd use it to psych out her enemies. The general's arguing for more ships to guard the Nile Delta, but Cleopatra's pushing for diplomacy first. Her voice calm but unyielding. You're struck by her balance of steel and silk, like she's weaving a spell over the room. The talk turns to Ptolemy, her brother, and you catch a call back to those earlier whispers. Remember the Jacobone charm? The scribe hints at unrest among Ptolemy's supporters, and Cleopatra's eyes narrow. She's not surprised, but she's not pleased either. Historians still argue whether she orchestrated her brother's eventual downfall or simply outplayed his faction schemes. You're betting she's already got a plan, her mind 3 steps ahead while the advisors scramble to keep up. You shift slightly, and the curtain rustles. Oops. The general glances your way, and you freeze, pretending to study the tapestry. Heart pounding. You're praying he doesn't call you out. A servant slips in with a tray of watered wine and dates, setting it down without a sound. You snag a date, the sweetness grounding you as you strain to hear more. The air is thick with tension, and the faint scent of papyrus and wax. You joke to yourself that if Cleopatra's strategy sessions had a playlist, it'd be all intense violin tracks with titles like Betrayal in B minor. The thought makes you grin, but you keep it subtle. The general's still side-eyeing you like you're a spy. Cleopatra's voice pulls you back, sharp and teasing as she challenges the scribe's numbers on grain shipments. She's relentless, and you're in awe of how she commands without raising her voice. The stars outside are fading, a hint of dawn creeping into the sky. You catch a glimpse through the window, the Nile a dark ribbon under the lightening horizon. The meeting's winding down, but Cleopatra's still sharp, rolling up a map with a flick of her wrist. You feel the weight of her world. Every decision a tightrope walk between power and ruin. A light breeze carries the scent of river mud, and you joke to yourself that if you were her sandals, you'd need a nap and a stiff drink by now. You're just a shadow in this game, but the stakes feel real, and you're bracing for the day's end, wondering how she keeps it all together. The advisors bow and leave, their footsteps echoing. Cleopatra lingers, staring at the map like it holds all her secrets. You slip away, heart still racing, the palace's quiet wrapping around you. The night's almost over, but her work never stops. You're ready for the final act, hoping you can keep your eyes open long enough to see her world through the dawn, or at least not trip over scroll on your way out. You're standing in a quiet courtyard of Cleopatra's palace, the first light of dawn painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. The air's crisp, carrying the faint scent of dew and the Nile's earthy breath. The bustle of Alexandria feels distant now, the city still waking beyond the palace walls. You lean against a cool marble column, watching the stars fade as the day begins to stir. The court's chaos, barges, banquets, conspiracies, feels like a dream you're slowly waking from. Cleopatra's world is still alive around you, but this moment is calm, a rare pause in her whirlwind of power and intrigue. You're here to reflect on her realm as the sun rises, your sandals dusty from a long night, your mind heavy with everything you've seen. The courtyard's empty save for a few servants sweeping the mosaic floor, their brooms whispering against the stone. A fountain bubbles nearby, its water catching the dawn's glow like liquid light. You think back to Cleopatra's throne room, her gilded barge, those shadowed plots. Remember Jacobone charm? She's a woman who balances divinity and danger, charm and cunning, all while keeping Egypt afloat. Historical fact: Cleopatra ruled as the last active Ptolemaic pharaoh, maintaining Egypt's independence against Rome's tide until her death in 30 BC. You're struck by her endurance, juggling allies, enemies, and a teenage co-ruler who's more liability than king. A quirky tidbit lingers. A servant hums a tune about the Nile's golden crocodile, a folk song said to bring luck. You smile. Imagine it as Egypt's version of a catchy jingle, stuck in your head all day. The song's soft rhythm blends with the fountain's murmur, and you feel your shoulders relax, the night's tension easing. You wander toward a low bench, sinking onto it as the sky brightens. A stray peacock struts by, its feathers brushing the ground, and you chuckle softly. Cleopatra's court even makes birds look extra. You're tempted to joke that if you were a peacock here, you'd be demanding a raise for all this glamour. The palace is waking now. Guards change shifts, their armor clinking, and a distant kitchen sends up the smell of baking bread. You think of Cleopatra, maybe still in that torchlit chamber, plotting her next move. Historians still argue whether her reign was a desperate defense against Rome or a bold bid to expand Egypt's influence. You're betting she aimed for both, her ambition as vast as the Nile itself. You grab a fig from a nearby bowl, left from some late-night meeting, and its sweetness grounds you. The fruit's juice stains your fingers, a small reminder you're still part of this world, not just a ghost passing through. The dawn's light creeps across the courtyard, warming the stone. You hear a faint chant from a nearby temple, priests greeting the sun with hymns to R.A. It's a call back to the temple rituals you saw. Remember the natron-sprinkled altar? Tying the days start to Egypt's ancient heart. You're struck by how Cleopatra wove herself into that heart, playing goddess and queen to keep her people loyal. A light breeze carries the scent of lotus flowers, and you joke to yourself that if you stayed here longer, you'd probably start worshiping cats like a local. The thought makes you grin, but the calm of the moment keeps your humor soft. As the sun climbs, you feel the weight of Cleopatra's world settling into your bones. Not just the opulence, but the endless dance of power, where every smile hid a strategy. You're just a visitor, but you felt the pulse of her court, from scented barges to whispered plots. The courtyard's quiet now, the day's stretching ahead, and you're ready to let it go, the memory of her radiance lingering like a fading star. Now, let the morning's light wrap you gently, its warmth a soft embrace as the palace fades into shadow. Feel your breath slow, each inhale pulling you deeper into calm, each exhale releasing the weight of Cleopatra's world. The Nile's murmur lingers in your mind, a soothing hum, like a fan spinning softly in the dark. Picture the lotus flowers drifting on the water, their petals closing as the stars return. You're safe here, cradled by the quiet, the intrigues and feasts dissolving into mist. Let your thoughts drift, light as a barge on the river, carrying you towards sleep. The day's done, the story's told, and all that's left is rest. Sweet dreams.